Because I think this should be the first time this is being spoken about. It's about including people with disabilities in open source contribution. So most of the time when we talk about diversity, they are often, I don't want to use the word forgotten for lack of better word, but in this conversation we'll learn how we can include people with disabilities in open source contribution and open source projects. So with that being said, I would like to invite my team or the crew or the panelists for today's discussion. So we have Yiga. Hello, Yiga. So while she comes in, I'll tell you a little bit about Yiga. Yiga is an open source advocate. She's a technologist. She's a co-chair here at Chaos. She's a maintainer for the accessibility team. And she also contributes as COO at Client Africa, where she collaborates using open source climate data platforms and energy access tools to community-driven resilience and environmental justice. Welcome, Yiga. The next panelist is Victoria Nduka. Victoria Nduka is a user experience designer who is going into cloud engineering. That's actually amazing. And her accessibility journey started off at her outreach internship, where she led a US audit that sparked a series of improvements to make the tool more usable for everyone, which is the whole point of accessibility. Welcome, Victoria. And then our final speaker, we have Oluwakemi Odusanya. Oluwakemi is an experienced gender and disability inclusion facilitator with over 5 years of experience in the program. She leverages her experience and she delivers technical support for companies to mainstream disability within their value chain. Welcome. She's also a part of the project Enable Africa community. Welcome, Oluwakemi. Now we have our panelists on stage. We would like to start off without wasting any time. So, hi, Yiga.
Hi.
Welcome again. So we'll start with you.
Okay.
You are a maintainer, yes, yeah, and also a co-lead here at Chaos Africa. So we'd want to ask you, what is the difference between a community that accommodates disability and one that truly includes people with disability? So what is the difference between accommodating people with disability and including them truly in the contribution?
Okay, thank you so much, Victoria, and hello, everyone. So answering your question is, it's in the way that the communities build their products. So for example, at the very beginning, when you're doing everything that you need to do, from your designs, from your code, from your Figma files, everything, are you conscious of the fact that there are people with disability in the world, right? Or are you being reactive to it? So it's like coming to an event, right? Or going for a dinner, for example, and all the chairs are there, but somebody with disability walks in, and you have to then pull the chair and give access for wheelchairs. Do you understand? So in that way, you are being reactive. You're not being proactive to it. So the way that you can, as an open source community, one of the ways that you can factor in accessibility from the get-go is when you have that idea, that spark, are you putting in the fact that your slides need to be accessible? For example, at this event, you can see a sign person here that is doing the work to make sure that they understand what we're even saying. Do you understand? So that means we're not being reactive to it. We're not seeing people with disability walking and then we're like, oh, who knows sign language here? Do you get the point? So it's the same thing in your teams, right? And that's why at Chaos, we're very, very conscious of that. We ensure that as much as possible within the community, how are we able to infuse accessibility into the things that we do? Our docs, are they accessible? The slides that you're watching today, most of them, I can tell you that 90% it's accessible. So people that, you know, for lack of it, we don't call all of them blind, we call them,
visually impaired.
Yes, visually impaired people can read the slides, they can understand it, you know. So the colors, there are people that, for lack of a better word, the colors that they can see white as black, they can see red as another color.
Colorblind.
Yes, colorblind. I was just trying to, yes, colorblind, but I was just trying to make them understand it, right? So not everybody sees your white as white, and not everybody sees your red as red. So you need to factor that in. I don't know if that answers the question.
That was very elaborative. Thank you very much, Iga. Hi, Victoria. Welcome again. So your own question is, have you, because here says you have actually contributed to UX auditing and implementation of accessibility in open source projects. So have you encountered resistance when proposing accessibility improvements in contributing to open source? That's the first question. Have you encountered resistance?
I won't say that I have, but on a general note, one thing that I've noticed when you try to propose for accessibility within a community or an organization is that they tend to think more on the compliance side and the extra work involved. Compliance and the problem with that is that when you're looking from the lens of compliance, it seems like a lot of work, like extra work. But if accessibility is considered, like Giga mentioned, from the beginning, and it's like imagining that the world as it is designed for people with disabilities. Then the rest of us who don't have disabilities are going to struggle to fit into that world. But if from the beginning we put into consideration these people that have disabilities, then we don't see it as extra work when someone is trying to propose for people with disabilities to be included in the community or in an organization.
Thank you so much. I agree. Starting from the get-go in accessibility is very important. Hi, Kemi. Hi, Kemi. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
We're happy to have you here. So, the first question, just a general question. You've heard about open source projects before, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what has been your first experience with open source as a person with disability and as a disability advocate?
Okay, yeah, so thank you very much for that question. So I think to answer that, I'll first give a context because most of our understanding seems to be that disability is either just blind or deaf. And when it comes to applications, either open source or what have you, we only consider those two categories of individuals, which actually is like you're shooting yourself on the feet. So, yes, I have I've used open source. In fact, I think I remember then in 2020, 2021, I was using Firefox, and it got to a point, anytime I want to browse, and I click on Firefox, and what I'll just, after, coming up on board, it just told me crashed. I think that was Firefox 57 as at then. And this was because it wasn't compatible with the screen reader I was using. So I left it. And I recall in 2022, I used Brave. That's brave.com, yeah. So, and it was quite accessible. Yes, it was accessible. I stopped using it for a while. And to an extent, when it comes to accessibility and open source, it's good. But there is also a question of contrast. For instance, I'm a blind person, and we have persons with albinism who are low vision individuals. How contrastable are this maybe source, maybe website, to users who have limited vision. Just like what you said, colorblind, right? These are people who would definitely see color, but they can't identify. Red is red. There's no point painting it. You can't say red is brown because it is what it is. So when you're talking of open source and accessibility, yes, I give it a thumbs up. It's quite accessible, at least for me that I've experienced it using screen reader as a blind person. But there's also another context to it. What about those who have low vision, persons with albinism, persons who have dyslexia, persons who have limited mobility? So all those things as well need to be, put into consideration.
Thank you so much, Kemi. So we are happy that some open source projects are accessible, but the whole point of having sessions like this, like Iga has said, is to contribute from the get-go, to include people with disabilities from the get-go, so that when these projects are being built, the accessibility is implemented from the very beginning, so you're not, proactive? Yeah, you're not reactive. So you'll be proactive instead of reactive. So Iga, back to you. As a lead in an open source community, has it been difficult for you to propose accessibility improvement? What have you encountered resistance, and how have you been able to navigate that?
Okay, thank you so much, Victoria. As a lead, so that question I need to answer it correctly, because at Chaos it doesn't happen, right? Chaos is very warm. It's a very warm community. So, however, as a lead in the tech space, in the open source space, what I can say is that you get excuses like, we don't have the disability budget. We are not prioritizing. I mean, they want to listen to you for what it's worth, right? They would listen to you. But it's not something that was in the planning process, for example. Do you understand? So we don't have so many voices advocating for PWDs, that's persons with disability in the tech space. So that means that, for example, the team that organizes the events, they are not factoring in the fact the people with disabilities, they might come for our event, there might be tech people, there might be people with disabilities in the tech space. Do you understand? So that's one. Second thing is, of course, the budget. If you don't factor them in from the beginning, that means that, of course, there's not going to be any budget for them, right? That's two. Three is the fact that sometimes some communities feel like, we don't really have users that are disabled. Do you understand? But hey, you never really know. And then when you categorize people with disabilities, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have an active disability. So let me explain that. I go to the mall, I'm in Spa, and I'm shopping, right? I'm carrying a baby on one hand. I'm carrying something on the other hand, right? But I'm going to be able to say, hey, Siri, can you do something for me? That's something that was factored in. It factors in the fact that at a point in time, you might not be able to use your hands. Does it mean that in that point in time, you're a person with disability? No. But you are unable to use your hands, so you use your voice. So thank you to Apple, and thank you to everybody that makes, voice commands able to work, right? So those little things that you might think are not so little or not so important, they also help us as people in our everyday lives. So for example, if you know the history of sidewalks as well, you would know that sidewalks and paves were meant for people with wheelchairs. But hey, it helps each and every one of us when we're walking on the road to avoid traffic and to avoid every other thing. Do you understand? So it's in the little things. It's in the not being reactive, but being proactive. It still goes back to that. So yes, I have faced it as a leader. I've seen it as a leader a million times, but that's why we have to keep talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's why we keep creating awareness and continue with the advocacy. Hi, Victoria, back to you.
Hi.
Hi. So as someone who has actively contributed to open source and also a designer, how can open source projects in design contributions and their workflow, how can you include people who are neurodivergent, people who are blind or have low visions, or people who are deaf or hard of hearing? Like, how can you include these people in designing of this project? That's one. And two, how can these people be a part of the creation of projects like this? How can they be contributors as well?
Okay. I'm going to start from the design part that you mentioned. So as a designer and also an accessibility advocate, sorry, I speak fast. So I'm going to try to slow down a bit for the sign language translator. So as a designer and an accessibility advocate, when I design, I always put into consideration the people who will be using this product, and this includes people with disabilities too. These disabilities range from visual impairment. So if I'm designing a slide, if I'm designing anything at all, I'm considering color, contrast, how this is going to view these things when I put them out. I'm considering on what devices will they be using these things. I'm considering how it will appear on on the devices that they're using to view these things. That is what I can say, like what readily comes to mind. There are a lot of other things to mention. Then, as an accessibility advocate, not all designers in the community may have knowledge that I have about the needs of people with disabilities. So I also try to, when I review designs of other designers, point out these things that they may have missed that would affect the experience for people with disabilities. And that's for the design aspect. Also, it helps to have documentation. If your design branding is documented somewhere, also include accessibility guidelines so that you don't always have to, because you may not always be in the room or be available to review these designs, so that whoever is working on that design is going to follow these guidelines, and the outputs will still be good. It will still serve these users with disabilities. Then in the aspect of, what's the second?
How people who have these disabilities can be
contribute
contributors
to open source projects. This, one thing that really comes to mind is from the onboarding process. So you may, as an open source community, you want to consider the tools that you use. So if you are both for communication, for contributing, for designing. So for communication, if you are using GitHub or Slack, whatever tools you are using for these different parts of your open source, to run your open source communities, have to be accessible. And the good thing is that most of these proprietary products, like is GitHub proprietary? I don't know. But most of these products that we use, Slack, GitHub, they meet most of the accessibility standards, so people with disabilities can use them. Then you may also want to run audits as well, as like that is something you don't want to overlook. So when you run audits, you run surveys, user surveys to maybe have like a pilot program where you have a few people with disabilities try to contribute to a specific part of your open source community or open source project. Then see what the experience is like for them. Determine where the gaps are, where the areas where they are struggling to make contributions. Then you try to fix up in those areas. So these are the ways that I can think of that we can lower the barrier for people with disabilities to contribute to open source.
I agree with you. Thank you very much, Victoria. And to talk about that, Chaos is currently doing that right now, where people with disabilities are parts of survey programs where they can actually give their opinions on the project that Chaos is building and know if it is accessible to them, and we use it as a guide for our audits. Thank you so much. So, hello, Kemi. Back to you again. So, the whole point of having sessions and awareness programs like this is for open source contribution and projects to be accessible. So as someone who has used open source products, what are some common accessibility barriers that you faced? I mean, I'm happy that the ones you used were a bit accessible, but you talked about you stopping to use them at some point because you had some issues. So those issues are some of the things we want to talk about. Like, what are some of the common barriers, accessibility barriers that you encountered while using open source tools and platforms?
All right. So I think a major thing is most of these sources or resources are built for us, that's persons with disabilities, but not with us. So when that comes in place, for instance, when I talked about using Firefox, and it got to a point it crashed because my screen reader wasn't accessible to it. Yes, you might have been able to tick some boxes to say, yes, you think because you can see this, it looks good, because you can, see the way the back end is looking and you feel it's fine. But at the end of it all, there are diverse screen reader. We have JAWS, we have NVDA, we have commentary readers that have their specific requirement and might not be tilted towards, the back end or whatever sources you're using. So I feel that if from the conceptualization stage, because at times, not even at times, all the time, when people, let's take a building for instance. You have a building and you're building it, you're creating it, very beautiful. It looks like, Washington, D.C. And you realize that you come in and you're unable to gain entrance and you're stuck and you now begin to imagine, will I begin to demolish this building? It's very beautiful now. Forgetting that if you had actually from the foundation involved everybody, regardless of disability or not, gender, race, what have you, you would find out that the production would be very fantastic. So that's where the challenges lie, right? For instance, the open source materials in terms of screen reader, some are not accessible to some specific, screen reader. And also I mentioned that of the color contrast, right? So visiting a website and you realize that the home page is, let me give, for example, color yellow. And you open the about page, that one too is, very yellowish. And a person with albinism is looking like, I'm seeing Ibadan, so it becomes very difficult for the person to navigate because the person thinks that he or she is in on page and meanwhile the person is in about page. So there's a need to color contrast some of this, if not all, of these things. And also, for instance, the video or pictures, right? As a deaf person, you're seeing video is scrolling and the person is speaking with beautiful accent and yet there is no closed captioning. There is no text to even transcribe what the person is saying. It's a loss. And you never can tell. The deaf person might even be the person that is ready to put about something $1 billion on your project and you've lost that person. So those are the challenges, not building with us. And you now think when you're 80% done, you now remember, my grandfather is blind. Let me, those are very, very bad challenges that at the end of it all might even ruin the project. And I think she mentioned something about user, what you call that thing? User survey. So during the, starting, the challenges of the individuals or the organizations not involving persons with disabilities, trying to find out what are the, issues that are encountered by this individual. There are a lot of challenges. Person with, I think, is it dyslexia or one kind of disability where you have a video, showing slides and it's very fast. That individual is unable to, you begin to rewind. How many times do you want to rewind, right? So those are the challenges that persons with disability faced, or even someone who, is speaking. And at times, accents for we that were in Nigeria, can be very disturbing. And the person is speaking, all those things are one of those challenges individuals with disability also face. Coming down to our language, not everybody that have disability understand English. That sometimes we also need to break it down. If it's Pidgin, fine. If it's Yoruba or, whatever diverse culture that you feel that needs your product is very, very important. You also streamline to that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kemi. Thank you for breaking that down for everybody to understand. Hi, Iga.
Hi.
So, your last question. Now we know what the issues are in the community, the open source community, and some of the issues that you've had. Do you feel that most communities are aware of disability inclusion? Do you think there's still a blind spot? I mean, we are doing the work, we are doing the awareness, but what do you think about people knowing about disability in the open source space, and how do you think we can rectify that issue?
Okay, thank you so much, Victoria. I think that I do know that it's still largely a blind spot, right? And I wrote a few things down, and I see three things, obviously. One of them is the fact that the barriers are invisible. So when we talk about open source, when we talk about tech, we're talking about working remotely, right? Most of the people I'm seeing here today, I'm seeing them for the very first time. We've been working, right? So that means that we're not seeing every day. So for example, somebody is blind, we do not know. Do you understand? Because they're interacting with us on Slack or on GitHub, right? So it means that what I'm trying to say there is the fact that the barriers are invisible, if you call it that. So they're invisible barriers and they are non-apparent, so non-cognitive, mental health, chronic illnesses. You don't know about that, right? So that's one problem. The other problem is the fact that there's limited lived experience in the leadership. So like I said before, if nobody in the leadership team is a person with disability or is an advocate, it's going to be very difficult for them to push for those things because it's not their lived experience, right? However, one interesting thing to me is the fact that we're all going to grow old someday, right? And we really do not know what life is going to throw at us, right? Are we going to lose a limb? Our eyesight's going to be as sharp as they are now, right? And imagine working in the tech space for almost all your life, and suddenly you're old, and then you realize accessibility was so necessary. Why did we not do something about it, right? So that's also another angle. So I would say to people that the fact that right now, the leadership, the maintainers, are not people living with disabilities, but you design for the future. You build for the future in mind and for the now, right? So that's two. I wrote a few things down. Let me try to get the last one. So there's also the cultural habit, right? I call it cultural habits because it's the tech world, the internet is a fast-moving space, right? So that means that we're designing for speed, right? We're designing we want everything done sharp, sharp, sharp. Before you know it, everything is done. We don't want to, in as much as sometimes we're saying we don't want bureaucracy, but sometimes it's okay to also slow down in certain things to make sure that you get it right from the foundation. And accessibility is one of those things. And I think the last part of your question is how do we navigate, right, from there? So I think navigating should be in your teams, when you go back today, in your various communities, speak about accessibility. You're creating a slide. What's the contrast of the slide? You're creating a logo. What is the ratio of, the contrast for a person with disability, right? Are they going to be able to read it? Are they going to be able to come to your website? Can the screen readers pick things from your website? Are you using the correct the headings, right? The H1, H2s, H3s. It's the simple things, because without that, there's no hierarchy on your website. And somebody that's, is using a screen reader is unable to know, okay, this is the header. Okay, no, this is a normal paragraph, right? That's what differentiates it for them. And that is essentially the difference. So I think that as maintainers, we just need to do better. As contributors as well, the beautiful thing about the open source space is that you're heard, regardless of whether you're a contributor or a maintainer. So please speak up, please talk about accessibility every time you get the opportunity in your work. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much, Iga, and I agree with you. nobody knows anything that can happen tomorrow. We can pray against it, we can say it to it, but anything can happen, right? So if we see disability as something that needs attention, maybe we will not be too scared about what's going to happen in the future, because we know that technology has our backs, because we are including accessibility, right? So the final question for today's panel discussion goes to Kemi, who wants you to have the last say. We've heard from Yiga on what to do in the team. Now we want to get your opinion. We want to hear an advice from you, because like the saying is, no talk about disability without people with disability. So what advice would you give to open source communities who are looking to factor in accessibility, include people with disability? What are the things you think we should do, where the correction should be in building, from community to project to team? Please give us your opinion.
All right, beautiful. So I know that we have persons with disabilities who are tech gurus, right? So there's nothing bad trying to look for these individuals, companies, organizations, to ensure that they contribute from conceptualize it. Let them be the one. Let us be the one to tell you where the shoe pinches, right? You see a lot of, or few organizations that are trying to adapt to inclusion, not because they see that, there is a national disability or law that says 5%. No, it's because probably they saw the need. A lot of individuals, right, if you say, let's even leave those, like we that cannot see, and the deaf persons or persons with disability who are here, and you ask, can you hear fully with your 2 ears? A lot of us might probably have 1 ear not hearing properly. I mean, maybe not fully, right? So the culture is really eating deep, and the way people identify with disability is what makes us feel that disability is a curse, and it's not. Just like what you said, disability has come to stay. Feel like pray, Allah is good, right? But it is what it is. What's the way forward? Gather these individuals you can do like a tea, coffee break. What are your experience? Can you take this laptop? Can you try to check our website? Is it accessible? Are the headings fine? Is the color contrastable? Is the picture? You go to some website that at times you'll be like, you just be scrolling, you just be graphics. What's graphics in? The images are there, but you can't even see it. Some are using the sliders that move from left to right. It's beautiful in your sight, It's he that wear the shoe that understand that this thing is not beautiful. I can't even click on a button that says apply, right? It's beautiful to you, but me that I cannot see it, it's an hindrance. So have a tea break with persons with disabilities. Ask them, review our website. Can you help review our website? Can you check either with laptop, mobile, several things as well. Those are a very big consideration. And at the end of it all, after maybe imputing those subtractions or additions that are being said by the individuals, do another post-assessments, post-audit. Don't say because they've said put heading 1, you two you are put, you feel that's all, you've become Baba. No. Do like afterwards, ask them, can you check, is it really heading 1? It might actually not be heading 1 that you put, it might be heading 4, right? So ask them, can you check, is it okay? And when it's okay, they will tell you it is okay. And a major thing, I think I've said that, is ensure you also include persons with disability on your team. Because, hey, I know that some people will say disability is very expensive. Yeah, it's very expensive. But when you now wear the shoe, you understand that it's not expensive. Right? So you need to first think ahead. Don't let disability think for you. Think now that you do not have a disability. Or I give an assignment, so even if it's expensive or not, when you're done with the program, just close your eyes and walk outside. You understand? So close your eyes and step out and see if it's actually easy or not. So it's very, very important. Have these leaders with disabilities with you so that they can test run, be in your team. So if anybody wants to say, no, how can you say 5 million naira is, but no, tell them, okay, this is the person that has the disability. Let the person explain why this thing is actually needed. And before you know, or perhaps that can be a convincing mark for your funders to see the reason why disability inclusion is very, very necessary in your organization and whatever project you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kemi, for the conclusion and your last remark. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope we have something we are picking home after this session. People with disabilities should be included in building not just open source projects, but the technology in general. Thank you.